Thank you. And I apologize. I did actually have a technical challenge and not an adaptive one. I need to share my screen. So whoever is sharing, if you can stop and I will put up my slides.
Go ahead.
And as that happens, I'll tell you a little bit more about my background. I actually was trained as a biochemist, bench basic research scientist for the majority of my life. Moved into college and graduate level education in the sciences. And yes, my career has been very nonlinear, and that is what makes it enjoyable to me. I've moved into higher ed administration, and my most recent last 8 years is really been focused on teaching specifically scientifically and technically trained professionals how to do all the stuff that they weren't actually trained to do in most of their experiences up until they become a leader or start managing people. So somebody else is still sharing. I don't know who. So I think that is a really good place for me to launch into this topic. In 2014, I became interested in this process, which is called immunity to change. And it was authored by Lisa Leahy and Bob Keegan, who worked at the Harvard School of Education. They've done work at the business school, at the Kennedy School, working with the adaptive leadership teams. And this method is something I'm going to teach you. I'm going to just run through at the end so you can see what that is. And that's just one way in which you can navigate through adaptive challenges. Okay, and here come the slides. So as I said, we're talking about adaptive challenges, how to spot them, why it matters. I'm not going to just leave you hanging and tell you how to recognize them and why you should care, but also thinking about a few strategies of what you can do with that once you know you are dealing with an adaptive challenge. And I'd like to just, as Pepe said, I am a trained educator, and one of the things that I specialize in is adult learning. And so as such, I would like to focus sort of the overall goal for the session on understanding the complexities of leading through adaptive challenges. And how will I know, and how will you know that you actually now understand that a little bit better than maybe when you start tonight, is that we're going to think about this learning as an active process. And the way adults learn is really by grappling with and doing things with what they're hearing. So objectives are always active. We're going to identify some of the differences between technical and adaptive challenges. We're going to explore specific examples, and I will, hopefully you will forgive me, be pulling from things in my realm, which is more biomedical, less software development and agile specific things that you currently are much more expert than I am. I know very little. We will discuss the consequences of approaching adaptive challenges as if they were technical challenges. We'll review a little bit of neuroscience. Promise I won't go too deep into the biology, but it's important to understand some of the high level principles that we now understand. And finally, there is another bullet that is not coming up. We will sample one method for dealing with adaptive challenges. So there it is. Okay, we can talk about this, doing this for individuals and for teams as well. So before we start, I would like to do a quick thumb poll. And I will not be able to see everybody, so I'm going to rely on Pepe and Maggie to help me sort of do a tally as the thumbs come up and come down. Is, first of all, I would like to know of the audience we have tonight, how many of you earned your college or university degree, formal education, in some sort of technical or scientific field? Yeah, digital hands or real hands, I don't care which. So if you can help me do a tally, Maggie and Pepe.
Yep, we are on it.
Okay, has everyone had a chance to thumb up or thumb down? Do you currently lead, manage, or coach technical teams? I'm assuming most people are going to raise their hand from this audience on that. And now, finally, who said yes to both? All right, so I'm seeing a majority of people who are both trained technically and now work in coaching or managing technical teams. Is that correct, Maggie, Pepe? You can see everybody, I cannot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the majority.
Majority technical teams.
Excellent. So somebody who was trained as a scientist myself, that there's a few things that come along with being a technically trained person, a scientifically trained person, and then also moving into a role in which you are managing people. So what we are going to do now is do an actual warm up in a breakout room with up to 2 to 3 other participants in the room. And what I really want you to tell me, or tell each other, and then come back if people will share, is leaning on your experiences, right? If you're introducing Agile methodology and culture to new organizations and teams, what percentage would you say are of the individuals that embrace and employ Agile with little effort, right? They have to learn. How many just have to learn like the nuts and bolts, and then they go off and do the work? And what percentage would you say struggle or resist doing this new way of working? And so that's the one question. What percentage just goes off and does it for the most part with a little bit of help? What percent of the people you work with struggle or actively resist? And have you been able to uncover or reveal causal factors for any observed resistance? And if yes, provide an example of what that observation is. And I'm hoping we'll give you like 10 minutes for this conversation. And I'm hoping when you come back, you'll be willing to share some of the things that came out. And this will lead directly into everything we talk about after this. I want to lean on the experiences of this group as we go into this conversation. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and then you'll go into breakout rooms. So everyone knows what you're doing. Yeah.
There are 2 hands, Dr. Vaughan, one by Anand. Anand, you have a question?
I think they just didn't lower their hand from the other.
Very well. Okay, very well. So
yeah, sorry about that.
No.
I'm sorry, Cheryl. Can you just very quickly restate those questions?
Yes.
Very clearly, please. Thank you.
Yes. So what percentage of the people you work with would you estimate? Obviously, I'm not going to call you to task on your numbers. Just generally, how many people, when you introduce Agile methodology and try to work with new teams or new organizations, what percentage of people take the baton and run with it for the most part? And what percentage of people resist? And of the people
so adopt versus resist.
Yes. And of the people who you experience sort of resistance or they struggle with it for some reason, have you been able to uncover some sort of causal reason for the resistance or the struggle? And if so, what was it?
Got it. Thank you.
Clear? Excellent.
Yep.
Okay, so I think Maggie will send you into breakout rooms. And we'll be back at 7:35.
Just finishing up creating them. Just give us a minute.
19 will suffice.
I put the questions into the chat for everybody for when they're in their breakout rooms.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Please excuse any typos. I was trying to go quick.
I open the rooms.
Yeah, they will go automatically.
Some people are going in, yeah. And I'm assuming, as Pepe said, some people join from their car and their commute. People who are unable to join will just stay in the main channel.
Occasionally, they ask us to send them because they lack the ability to do that, right? But a good chunk stay in here for a multitude of reasons. Let me monitor that. Unassigned. Oh, wow.
Can you see anybody?
Yeah, hang on one second. Hang on.
Mhm.
Hang on, because there's some confusion here.
All breakout rooms will close in 3
Yeah,
days.
yeah. There was,
If the breakout rooms are going to be a technical challenge.
no, it's not. It's not. It's just that we had some earlier,
Right.
and folks started sort of like going to
Populating the old ones.
those rooms. So that's why. So not a problem.
Well, my group had a very productive session, even though it was quick. It was very agile, but
It
Very
worked.
efficient.
It worked for everybody who was net new. Anybody who was here for the 101 session came back to the 101 room.
I'm telling you, I knew that she was going to apply the technical challenges versus the adaptive challenges.
Well,
Yeah.
we adapted.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's the
should we
point.
just, are we still sending them back to breakout rooms, or should you want to just have the conversation here? People can just share as they like, or would we want to have the
No,
discussion?
they're gonna go now.
They are.
Oh, fine.
Okay.
There we go.
Thought that you accidentally set up breakout rooms of 19 people rather than 19 breakout rooms.
Ah. That'll do it.
No, that wasn't it. The 3 rooms that we initially start with, folks were populating those. But anyways, everybody's going.
Yeah, so it looks like we got 18 rooms with everybody in. Except for us.
All right. Well, so we still have sort of 19 people in the main room, but everyone I think who has stayed is muted, so are more listening. Well, of the people in this room who do the work, I mean, Pepe, you do the work. Anand, I'm assuming you do this work. We can certainly have the conversation everyone else is having.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Just make sure, let me make sure that the unassigned have had an opportunity. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's have the conversation.
Okay. Are we staying here or joining room 15?
Yeah, let's stay here.
Anand, you have the option. You are assigned to room 15, so you can join. They are waiting for you there.
Oh, okay.
But it's fine.
Uh,
No one has joined. Okay, no one. It looks like no one has joined 15.
Then just, Anand, just share your thoughts here. I'm happy to hear them.
yeah, certainly. So let's see. I started as a product owner, manager at a company last May. It's probably my 4th stint in terms of doing Agile. The company itself has just started switching from kind of a waterfall method into an Agile, right? So they're probably in the first third of their journey. In terms of our team is about 10. It's too big. We have 3 product owners and 1 scrum master, 2 managers, so and only 8 engineers. So it takes a lot of time to kind of form consensus. So that's kind of the challenge. In terms of adoption versus resist, I think that actually a fair number want to have a desire to adopt it. And what we have found in terms of the challenges and the resistance that we haven't really talked about are people's values. Some people really like to have this amount of work, throw stories on a Jira board, and move tickets from the left to the right. Other people would much rather work on innovation, which is really only one thing. A lot of unknowns, a lot of ambiguity, but they really want to move the ball forward, right? And we're not really talking about our values. We're really not talking about innovation because there's so much process around Agile software development that I think people will naturally start trying to work more on process mechanics than talk about the work. That's been my experience.
Interesting. So the process mechanics sounds to me like engaging in a process conversation is one that it's a process that's well established, right? So there's a method to Agile. There's a way, a process in which it works, correct? The daily stand-up, I'm just going to say a few words, but I don't really know anything about it. I have not worked with any Agile process, but a process-driven sort of population, it is a very technical thing, right? You can tweak it, you can make it better, you can scale it, but there's no emotions around it. If you like the process and you can see the process and you can engage in the process, getting better at it is just a technical challenge. Does that make sense? But so people who actually have different values and are interested in different types of work might resist engaging in the process because it's not where their interests lie, and they're not interested in that change, and actually revealing those things by having a conversation about why some people want to really embed themselves in the process and why some people don't. That smacks of an adaptive challenge.
Yeah, I always try and come back to the Agile Manifesto myself, because I really value people and interactions over tools and processes.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather, I'm more concerned about talking about the work than talking and using Scrum terminology such as daily Scrum, epic refinement, getting hung up on calling it a daily Scrum versus a stand-up, getting reprimanded because we're using the incorrect terminology. This is just wasting a lot of precious time.
Mm-hmm. And how much is the language? How much is the language about or influence the culture on the team itself? And do other people feel the same way, that they don't want to get stuck on the dogmatic and linguistic aspects of how to properly talk about the work as opposed to what work is being done?
So we're actually the DevOps team, right? So in many ways, we really should be pioneering a lot of this. We're really kind of at the center of the hub between development, QA, PMO, product, and the like, right? But we're kind of lagging a little bit. And I think there's just been so much effort in our company to try and do Agile software development. We're not. We're doing waterfall, but pretending like we're Agile because we're doing PI planning.
Got it.
Right. And so people have different versions of scaled Agile framework. Is it the Agile version, SAFE, or no, you know what? We resist the language there. We're going to do Scrum at Scale with Dr. Sutherland instead, right? And so there's no real kind of agreement really deep down in terms of how it is we're doing this. Like, who's determining the business value of these stories that we're saying? We don't know. I don't know. And I'm a manager. Isn't that horrible? Like, how is that happening?
Sounds like there's some feelings about it.
Yeah. Well.
So let's let everyone get, I think everyone's going to be coming back in like a minute, but another way to think about technical challenges versus adaptive challenges is one is pretty matter of fact and practical and pragmatic. And it's like, if you have a how-to manual, then you can follow it, and how well you follow it is about experience, right? So you can get better, you become more expert, but you're just following this how-to and just getting better and better and better every day. So a technical challenge, now it was a project in the beginning because you had to learn how to do it, and now it's a process. But when you're talking about somebody just doesn't engage in the process, or the transformation is not happening as it should, and if you have not revealed and had conversations about why not and what's going on, then we're talking about feelings, we're talking about behaviors, we're talking about perspectives and unconscious drivers that can really stagnate your efforts. So when you say you don't know what's going on, the uncertainty, we'll talk a little bit about uncertainty as something that triggers a threat response in a lot of people. And that is another core signature of an adaptive problem. When people feel threatened, they stop working, and they don't work the way they should, and they don't work together. they don't collaborate as well. I think.
Then, Sunny D couldn't go to a breakout room. I don't know if you like to sort of engage her into the conversation.
I cannot see her, but everyone else will be coming back soon. Sunny D. I'm sorry. I really apologize. I have a single monitor, so I cannot see everybody.
Yeah, so she wasn't able to join a breakout room. That's why.
They're closing in 30 seconds.
Okay.
She also doesn't come to the top of my screen. But Sunny, if you can hear me, please feel free to share. So we'll take 5 to 10 minutes for people to maybe give us a little bit of what they talked about. What are some experiences that you've had in terms of people who really are engaged and take up the Agile march versus people who resist, and if you've been able to uncover anything. So maybe the best way to do it, because there's a lot of people here, is if you would like to share, please raise your hand. I think if you raise your hand digitally, you come up to the corner where I can actually see you.
Mm-hmm.
Would anyone like to share what they talked about? There, David. Oh, we got a bunch of people.
Right. We actually had two discussions. One was the micromanaging manager who refused to let go and had to control everything. And that was a very bad situation. And then we had another one where it was sort of people didn't do all the ceremonies of Agile, but they were doing a lot of the other things down underneath. And you had a group that was doing that versus a group with the micromanager, and the group that was communicating and keeping the customer in did so much better than the other group. That was one of the other guys mentioned that, and that was it works. And even if you don't do all the ceremonies, it's a mindset, and very good.
And so, as the person who is micromanaging, this is a very common sort of response to change, right? Also, making sure that they're controlling and making sure that they're bringing value and making sure that, if they're being held accountable for what the outcomes are, that they are always present. And it's not necessarily a good thing, as you mentioned. It actually holds people back. But that's a single individual person having an adaptive challenge or facing their own adaptive challenge with the process. So thank you, Bill. David's Heinemann.
Okay, here I am. It was interesting in my group. It was more not really understanding or being able to pull together Agile. Like one person, said in her group, no one really had a grasp of what Agile was, and if they had an Agile coach, they weren't really doing their job, because otherwise she and they would know, but they were at sea. In another group, the person in the breakout group had ideas from previous companies, but her particular team hadn't yet coalesced around a definition of Agile even to resist in the first place. There were all these ideas from the past, but no one had said, this is our Agile. So in a nutshell, resist what?
So it seems to me that this is sort of even a pre-stage. You don't know yet if you will face a technical or adaptive challenge, because they don't even know what the how-to manual looks like, right? If you give them the how-to manual and they know what they're supposed to be doing and they get into a rhythm with their team, then you'll see who's coming along and doing the work and participating and who is actually not. But it seems like, at least in these conversations, it's too early to even tell if you will have, what mix of technical and adaptive challenges you will have in those teams. All right, we have time for one more person. I think, Peter, you had your hand up first.
Okay. There was also Sylvia, but go ahead, Peter.
my group, in addition to the folks carrying the baton and the folks actively opposing, had two more groups. One was those who passively opposed, and the other was those who tried hard, sort of got some aspects of Agile, but didn't quite make it.
Okay, so then opposers, whether active or passive opposers, are the ones who are experiencing some sort of feelings about this change, right? You're bringing change to this team, and if they're opposing it, the real question is, now that you know that some people were passively or actively opposing, did anyone uncover the reasons why? So the people who tried, they might not have had the support they needed, but are not necessarily opposing. Right? They're interested, they're engaging, they want to learn, they want to do this. But the people who are opposing, whether actively or passively, have some reasons. Were any of the reasons uncovered? Were any conversations had with the people who were opposing the adoption of Agile?
Sylvia had raised her hand. Do you have time for one more?
I do. I'm just wondering with David, if anybody actually in that group talked about if they found out the reasons why opposition was happening.
Oh, in my group, at least to my ears, the answer was no.
No. Okay. Okay. Interesting. All right. Thank you.
So
Sylvia.
one more, Sylvia.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We actually talked about why. One of the examples in my team was that it was an engineer who was in a different company, and then they were doing the Agile, not being the Agile. So he had a bad experience. He didn't think it's going to work. So it's my job as a new coach to show him how we do things differently that actually meet the Agile goal instead of just doing those meetings.
I see. So he felt that the rituals were there, but the work wasn't getting done. Am I understanding that correctly?
So he felt like the rituals and whatever people are saying being Agile is not actually helping them to be more productive and produce products faster or quicker.
So the opposition was really not to the process, but to the process not seeming to actually work or be better than what they were already doing.
Yes, the past experience.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. I'm going to move on because we definitely need to hit some of the rest of the material. Thank you, everyone, for sharing and engaging in that conversation. One thing that we'll start thinking about now is that not all challenges are created equal, right? So when I think about technical challenges, you can have technical challenges in a non-technical field. Like I said, technical challenges just means you have a problem that you have to solve. You are given instructions, or you can figure out how to do it yourself. And then just by practicing, you can get better, right? So you can get better, you can get faster, you can get the job done. And it now becomes a process in which you are an expert, right? So does everyone experience being something as a technical challenge the same way? So think about that. Just because something is a technical challenge for one person, it can be an adaptive challenge for somebody else. And we'll talk about some examples. And when we think about an adaptive challenge, just think about that they require more time, right? You need room for experimentation, and there has to be an internal motivation within the individual and within the team. And as the maze indicates, you don't necessarily know where you're going. So there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of ambiguity, and there's a lot of feelings about the uncertainty and the ambiguity. And even if you say, I really want to accomplish this, as you try and try and try, you might end up not even going out the other end of the maze, but right back where you started. So one example of one really great example, I think most people can relate to regarding adaptive challenges, is New Year's resolutions. How often have you set a New Year's resolution in January, and it's something that really matters to you? You really want to make this change. And typically, if it is an adaptive challenge, by the end of January, you have already given up on your goal. Okay? And you don't even know why. So this is an important way to think about it. Adaptive challenges there are some unconscious drivers that really prevent us from getting to our goal. We have our foot on the gas and we have our foot on the brake at the same time. But the reasons why are not clear. Okay, so meeting adaptive challenges requires voluntary examination. So the other thing about adaptive challenges compared to technical challenges is that you as a manager, as a supervisor, as a coach, you can say with the technical challenge, okay, I need you to get X, Y, and Z done by Friday, and it will get done. And you can actually tell people to do it, and there's no feelings about it. They know how to do it. It's on their list, it's on their calendar, they get it done. But if it's an adaptive challenge for the person you're talking to, and another good indicator that you're facing an adaptive challenge for this individual is that it's something that in theory they should be able to do, that they have the skill sets for, but yet time and time again, they're not getting their work done, but you don't exactly know why. So let that stew for a little bit. So if somebody is facing an adaptive challenge, you can't mandate that they suddenly meet the challenge. If it's an adaptive challenge for them, there has to be some sort of internal driver, motivation, and change in their perspective and behaviors for them to really want to get over the hump of that adaptive challenge. So another way to think about this as a technical challenge, you're doing the same thing bigger and better, right? So it's incremental growth, right? I love biology analogies because I'm a biologist. So the caterpillar, right? Just gets bigger and fatter, but it looks the same and it just eats more and more and more and more. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if we think about changing behaviors and perspectives to acquire new capabilities, which is really what we're asking for people to do when you're asking them to change, you're asking them to change their habits, their behaviors, their relationships, their roles, right? Their whole team structures change when you have a new process where you go from waterfall to agile methodology. Even the titles change and maybe even relationships change. That means a status change, okay? All of these things lead to a really messy, sort of ambiguous situation for the people at work, all right? But what we're asking them to do is really become that butterfly. And biologically, the difference between this caterpillar and the butterfly is enormous. It now has an exoskeleton, it flies, it eats completely different things, right? So we're asking people to really transform through adapt. And when it's an adaptive challenge, if they get out the other end, they are a completely different person. Okay, and change is hard. We all know that. So now, again, thinking about what is technical for one person could be adaptive for another. All right, so you know you're facing a technical challenge. If there's a how-to manual you can follow and meet your goals, right? This is, some people might say, you know, I've decided I'm going to run a 5K. I've never run before. Here's a method. There's a podcast. There's a book, Couch 5K. I'm just going to do it, run my 5K, and I'm going to start running. Great. And what about the person who buys the book, wants to become a runner, really wants to become a runner? They genuinely want to do this. But after they buy the manual, the how-to, they leave it unopened. It's on the bookshelf and they look at it every day and they think about doing it every day. But just like those New Year's resolutions, somehow they get unaccomplished. They just don't even get started. They don't get off the couch. Okay. So what do you think is happening in this situation? That's a key signature of a difference between a technical challenge, somebody who's facing it as a technical challenge, somebody's like, yeah, I'm going to run. They pick up their manual, they follow the steps and they do it, versus somebody who really wants to do it and somehow can't even get off the couch. What are your thoughts? What's happening? This is me, by the way. I'm the one who really wanted to run it. I just won't.
Are you talking about somebody who's working from home and can't get off the couch and has a laptop in front of them? Just kidding. But
me.
It's you. But for the last 2 years, a lot of us can't just get off the couch. It's mentally, I think. That says something else totally different.
Well, but it leads into some of the challenges that we face because there's something else going on about how we feel about getting up and getting out. For me, this has been a lifelong. Oh, I'm I would say I'm athletic, but I'm not an athlete. And I've never been an athlete, but I've always admired people who can run and admired the physique of runners. Like, I'm going to do that, but no, not really. I want to, but at the same time, I can't get past that hump. And the way I'm going to do it, and I started last summer, and sometimes the motivation, as you know, must be internal. My youngest said he wanted to run, but he didn't want to run by himself, and he hates running also. So I started. And actually, I ended up being able to run 2.5 miles, which is pretty good for somebody who normally only walks places.
And
Okay,
you know what?
David, you have your hand up. Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
You're on mute, David. We can't hear you. You're still on mute.
Okay.
There you are.
How's it now? Okay. Was interesting, and it talked about with New Year's or what it talked about, a caterpillar to butterfly. It hit home. Reading your abstract before this talk, I thought, well, technical challenges are product oriented, adaptive challenges are process oriented. But I'm realizing when you talk about caterpillar and butterfly, you could have product challenges that are technical and product challenges that are adaptive.
Yes.
You know, like a technical challenge would be to add another name in an attribute field. You know, you can follow that. Yep. Another one is, let's see, if I go to engineering or science like chemistry,
yeah,
to introduce a totally new chemical engineering process, and you need to write a user story for that. I would say that's a product-oriented challenge, but it sure is adaptive. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, because you're asking people who have a standard already. They probably have regulatory and compliance and things around with whatever chemical engineering process they already have to get a product, and any sort of side products, contaminants. And so there's technical challenges there. And then there's adaptive challenges, because maybe you're changing how they do their work. Maybe they need new equipment. Maybe they just, people, what does it mean to be in a comfort zone? It means that you are certain, you have certainty. You know what you're doing, and you know your value, and you know you can do it well. So something else comes along and you're not quite as good at it, and you're worried about something, right? There can be a lot of bells and whistles to a new process, right?
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I'm going to take one more question and then I'm going to keep going. Did that answer? Yeah, I see Jim Alley at the top with a hand up.
Right. Hi, Cheryl. Hi. So I think a lot of people, just like you said earlier, Cheryl, is like, they see a lot of bells and whistles. They see a lot of impediments. They see, I can get this done real quick. But I think what they don't see is the end game. They don't see the incremental value, incremental progress as the one's going through safe and agile. It's just going through agile, and they don't see well, I can go through a process and I can become a lot more collaborative. I just saw somebody's chat, but they don't see the end game. They don't see how they can collaborate and work together. Where actually in the waterfall, what were the people doing back in the days? They were working in silos. I think today they like when people work in teams and work in agile and work together and get the whole thing done incrementally and have great success.
So thank you, Jim. So generally, yes. So relationships and relatedness among teams is something that can be very rewarding for people, and that can actually help overcome some barriers. And somebody, Michael in the chat, has asked me to address some of the discussion and sort of the brain science about choice and commitment, and how we build new behavioral pathways. And I'm definitely heading there, Michael, so be patient. Let's keep going. I think this is a good strand that we're on. And again, the things I'm pulling here are sort of, in this case, biomedical. So let's talk about patients with heart disease. It might seem completely unrelated to the work you do, but let's think about it. Let's think about sometimes people have resistance because what they do and the way they do it, and it's complex, and unless you know their whole life history, you won't even know all the factors that play in to the behaviors that they have, right? But if you have patients with heart disease and they're told that their survival absolutely depends on taking blood pressure medication, okay, but still on average, 1 out of 7 patients will be compliant with their blood pressure medication. What does that mean? Does that mean 6 out of 7 patients are totally fine with not surviving because they won't take their medication? I mean, that actually can't be true, right? So what is going on? Why would people not just do that one simple technical step, right? It's just a little checklist. Take your medication and your outcomes will be much better. So again, another biomedical example, but something that really doesn't seem to make sense, right? If we think about, and we're technical people, we think about facts, we think about numbers, we think just take the medication, but people's behaviors, and we know in biomedical innovation, there's a huge gap between the technologies and the innovations that we have and their uptake and the implementation, right? We know for a fact, we have lots of studies around management of type 2 diabetes, that if people actually get the exercise, change their diet, they can actually even reverse type 2 diabetes in most cases. But it doesn't happen. The diabetes epidemic is still growing. So what's going on? So this is a simpler one, which is why I didn't get into the diabetes. This is a simple one. Really, the doctor says you need to take your medication or you are at serious risk. Yeah.
Steven Reed has an interesting comment. Are tablets reinforcing being old and sick?
That's it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yes, that's one of them. So here's what I had. Actually, Stephen has his, let me just go through the slide and then I'll answer your question. So, right, on the surface, many problems can be seen as technical. Take your pills, right? Shrug it off. It's a simple solution, but maybe not. Maybe it's not as simple as we think, right? So the problem is take medication. That's a technical problem. But the adaptive challenge is changing lifestyle, right? To eat healthier, get more exercise, lower stress. But why, in addition to that sort of aspect of adaptive challenge, there's other things going on. Feelings that might be fueling these competing commitments. And I want you to hear that phrase and I want you to think about it, right? So you have a commitment to lower your blood pressure. And when you have a competing commitment, maybe, depending on the person, to not feel like an old person. Exactly. Taking pills, that's what my dad did. I'm turning into my dad. I don't want to take pills. I'm from the Midwest and I have actively heard people say vegetables are rabbit food. Okay. Meat and potatoes is all they want. And it's not manly to eat a vegetable, right? So this is like, these are these perceptions and they feel strongly about them. And it's part of their identity. It's part of their makeup. It's part of what drives them. It's part of what makes them feel good about themselves, whether it makes sense to anybody else or not, right?
So quick comments, Dr. Vaughan. One that I think is really relevant. Vicky says people can eat right and exercise and they still have some kind of disease.
Absolutely, right? So they can eat right and exercise. What I'm talking about, Vicky, is that there are studies. There's actually an entire behavioral support plan that's now being disseminated through the CDC, but it's not being taken up at medical centers because it's run through the social centers that are trying to relate and partner with hospitals. Okay, I can give you the references if you like, but it is proven to actually reduce type 2 diabetes in 78% of the people who are compliant with the program. They did a clinical trial on that. So just for that specific example, I can give you a reference if you're interested. I'm not saying it's everyone's, there's no blame here. I'm just saying that there are some other challenges and other drivers, and it's really hard to change lifestyle behaviors. Does it make sense, everyone?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I am now. And somebody asked about social situations, and we're going to get in now into the brain science. I'm doing okay on time, 7:59. So let's talk about the neuroscience, okay? And let's talk a little bit about your brain and how it develops some of these pathways. So social situations, we know, and since around 2000, right? Now 2 decades of neuroscience tells us a lot of things about social cognition. So social situations activate the same approach and avoid, right, threat reward system as is used for processing primary biological cues, right? So, and this, I'm not talking about the exact topic of, but this is this image, this figure is from this reference if you want to look that up. But this is about the neuroscience of prejudice and stereotyping. And really what I want you to know, and I don't need you to memorize anything about the brain, but I want you to know that the brain, even though we like to think about the brain as being logical, the brain is a social organ. The brain is actually developed in a social context. And our understanding of the world and our understanding of what is expected of us and how we have to behave very much depends upon the family, the community, the culture that we were raised in. Okay, so think about this when you see people behaving in ways that might be confusing to you. Trying to take a step, put yourself on the balcony and think of your own, reflect on your own drivers of why you do what you do. But primarily, I want you to understand that we are all constantly experiencing threats and rewards in our relationships, in our social interactions, okay? And we know this because the same structures in the brain, when you put somebody in an MRI, the same structures of the brain light up in response, in response to a threat or reward, as would light up if it was a biological threat or a biological reward, right? So I think about primary cues, which are straight up survival biology, right? So food, your plane went down, you're stranded in somewhere, and food, water, and shelter is what you need, okay? And the same areas of the brain, right? Recognizing that you need to approach something, you need to get some food, you need to get some water, and you have feelings about it. So the insula is your connection to your gut, and there is a neural connection to your gut. Okay, and the amygdala would be a direct response if you are actually perceiving a predator, okay, some sort of threat to your survival. Okay, and these are deeply embedded. So if you've ever heard the term, the amygdala hijack, it means that when you experience or you see features, you perceive features in a social situation that you associate with a threatening or unpleasant social situation, you can get hijacked by your amygdala. If you've ever seen someone just go nuts and just angry for seemingly something really small, forgive them later. They will regret it. They were hijacked. They were hijacked by this part of the brain that has a very strong response to threats. Okay, so if we think about social cues now, and when you think about interacting with people, we like people who see us and light up, right? They're happy to see us. We love social rewards, which means status, right? Status at the office, whether it's a title, whether it's an office, whether it's increased pay, whether it's new responsibilities, whether it's greater autonomy. These are all things that we experience as rewards. Okay, if we have made a mistake and we are worried about being demoted, or we're worried about a bad performance review, I mean, these are actually things that we are going to avoid. It's a threat. It's a social threat, and it's something that we experience at work. Work is full of social interactions. That's whether we think we bring our personal life to work or not. Wherever you go, there you are. It's you everywhere, whether you think that's true or not. You bring your whole self with you. Okay, so let's take this a little bit further. And knowing this neuroscience, I'm going to tell you a little bit about a neuroscientist who now has gone into executive coaching and leadership training, David Rock. He has a model. I will give a PDF of these slides to the organizers, so you all have these at the end. David Rock came up with a model called the SCARF model. So 5 domains of social cognition. And he based this off a lot of literature research in primates and in humans in terms of how we basically think of these as buckets of social interactions and how we experience rewards and threats. Okay, so status, right? We talked about this already. Status, actually biologically, primates of higher status have been shown to live longer and be healthier. Okay, we actually know that a sense of status is directly related to your physical health. Okay, certainty. Now, we talked about this before, but certainty, again, is like when people feel like comfort foods, they're in their comfort zone, they're in their home, they're in the neighborhood they grew up in. If I travel to Wisconsin and where I grew up, if I drive on the back roads that I grew up driving as a teenager, it just feels like home. It just feels like I know exactly where everything is and where it goes. And it was really just wired into me. Those are my roads, right? And then I moved as an adult to Spain and nothing ever felt quite right. Nothing ever felt comfortable, because certainty is not about being right. It's about your brain being able to predict the near future based on your habits and behaviors and the way other people behave around you, right? It's taking the same roads to work every day, right? Suddenly there's a detour. Even though that's small, it might be enough to really throw your day off, because suddenly you weren't able to predict the near future. All right. Autonomy. Again, you can easily give your team some sort of sense of status by giving them more autonomy, because it also helps them feel a little more certain about their work they're doing. Because if they're controlling it, at whether it's true or not, they feel like they know more what the outcomes will be. Okay. Relatedness on teams, right? When you are bringing new teams together, or you are changing people's roles or how they interact with each other, it can really impact, it can be a real threat. If a new person on the team comes on and somebody else is somehow changed their role as a result, they can experience that as a threat. And then they might disengage from the process. Okay, they are experiencing an adaptive challenge, and they will be probably less cooperative in the work you're trying to do when you're getting people on board for an agile process. So pay attention to relationships on the teams you work with. And fairness, of course. Fairness is like, it's one of these things that your brain actually processes quantitatively without you knowing it, right? Keeping score is just something your brain does, okay? So you will know if somebody was even pointed out at a meeting more often, got to speak more frequently. People are keeping track. They're not even trying to keep track. Their brain does that for them in the background, right? It's a running count. So as coaches, as leaders, as managers, if you are aware of the SCARF, this is called SCARF, SCARF, right? Think of these domains and think about how you can engineer rewards instead of threats along these domains. Because frankly, if you're bringing in change, you're bringing in this agile method, there is some uncertainty there. So there will be some threats experienced in the certainty domain. So what can you do to make up for it? How can you actually give rewards around a sense of status and autonomy, relatedness, and fairness? And be honest about the uncertainties and the ambiguities and the changes that will come up, because people appreciate clear communication from their leaders. So this is something to keep in mind. Now, again, I have this image of the scarf because I want you to realize that this is not, people's behaviors didn't just happen, the week before you met them. Okay. Our experiences and our triggers around these scarf domains have have been accumulating our entire lifetime. Okay, since we were old enough to perceive that somebody was happy or unhappy with something we did, right? And so we've sort of inferred this sense of social rules based on experiences, and nothing has even been articulated or explicit. We make a lot of assumptions based on our lifelong experience around what's expected of us. Okay, so keep that in mind. These feelings are strong and they're layered and they're complex, which is why adaptive challenges are a real beast to work through. Now, is somebody keeping track of the chat? So Michael, hopefully I addressed some of the things you wanted to talk about in terms of the getting new behaviors and how the brain works on that. I want us to think about, again, that most of us, yes, Pepe?
Just a quick time check, is 8:10, that's all.
Thank you, yeah. So now remembering that we're all technical professionals, most of us were trained as technical scientific professionals, and we're still working with scientific and technical professionals. And we excel at solving technical problems. And we like them. Actually, we love to take any problem and say, yeah, it's a technical problem, right? This is actually just solve it this way, X, Y, and Z. And if you're quick to solve problems using technical approaches, the ones that cannot be solved that way will become apparent immediately, okay? Because for some reason, something won't get done. And if you can't uncover the reasons, and it ends up being a much more complex conversation with different people about perspectives. If people get heated, if people disagree, if there's going to be more to it. And so the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that technical professionals, okay, the ones that are promoted into leadership roles often struggle. So maybe this does not apply to the people in here tonight, but if you're working with teams and the leader was actually promoted into a leadership role because they were exceptionally good at their technical job, okay, well, they're probably going to struggle. They're going to struggle because they have not actually thought about how to solve other types of problems other than technical problems. But it gives them a lot of street cred, right, with the people on the team because they're the technical experts. But frankly, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So technical professionals try to solve all problems with a technical solution. So why is that a problem? There's this is something that we need to think about. The technical professionals, we will all say, well, here are the facts, right? But in thinking only about the facts and ignoring the feelings, then we're also ignoring our own feelings and how we feel about facts. Let me explain. I know a lot of scientists who believe that they are actually cool and objective and logical, but we know actually that there is no cool thinking. All of our thinking is driven and all of our perspectives are actually driven with emotions, okay? Scientists all over the place have their favorite theories, their favorite hypothesis, their favorite model, their favorite way of looking at their data. And as a result, it's really hard for them to shift gears and look at it a different way later. Okay, so yes, there's always going to be some facts that you have to grapple with. And if it's only fact-based problem, it's a technical problem. When their feelings get involved, then don't ignore the facts about the feelings and don't ignore your feelings about the facts. And that's the point of this slide, okay? Now, one last thing, and then I'm going to give you just a sample of how you can help people address some adaptive challenges that they're experiencing. But this is from an article, and I've given you the reference from Ronald Heifetz and Marty Linsky in terms of if you are a leader and you are facing an adaptive challenge, then you need to be an adaptive leader. So quick little checklist for you. Go to the balcony. What does that mean? It means that people are not going to trust you unless you actually have a really good understanding of yourself. So mentally, and if you're in a charged sort of conversation, situation, you need to be able to, as a leader, step back, take a breath, go to the balcony and understand your own drivers, your own emotions in this moment, what's going on with you, calm yourself down and put that aside, because your feelings don't matter in the moment. The feelings of the person you're trying to help get past this challenge is what matters. So once you've gone to the balcony, go back, give the work to the people, because actually going through an adaptive challenge is the work of the person doing the work. You cannot solve the problems for them. David, yes, it's a good question. We could debate that over drinks. Why do so many companies promote technical expert to leadership roles? It's not good. Actually, it's not that it's not good, because they are respected because of their technical expertise, but actually what needs to be done is those technical experts need to have complementary training around what everyone loves to call the soft skills, which are the most difficult skills there are. Okay, so ask questions. If you're leading through an adaptive challenge, right, recognize it's an adaptive challenge and give the work to the person who has to do the work. Support them, ask questions to understand, but don't try to solve the problem. Listen and build trust. Accept that conflict will be part of working through adaptive challenges, because people might get, mad, angry, uncomfortable, threatened. But if you understand and you keep the SCARF model with you, you can bring the SCARF model with you to the balcony, to your mental balcony. And then the other thing, and the reason a lot of times adaptive challenges get treated like technical challenges, is people want to get the work done. You're reporting to other people, outcomes need, Q1 results need to go in, end of year things need to be done. But the fact of the matter is adaptive challenges take time. And if people don't get the time to work through it, then you will actually not be able to get back to the work at hand. Michael, I'm going to address that after I get through my last couple of slides. If I have time for questions at the end, I will take them. I feel like we've had a great interactive session. So, and if you have any other questions and I don't get to them tonight, the organizers have my email and you are more than welcome to send me messages. Okay, so what if you could actually accelerate the process of working through an adaptive challenge? Okay, wouldn't that be an attractive proposition? So I would like you to think again, biologically. The SCARF model, right, gives us a framework for our behavioral defenses, right? Why we feel threatened and what we do in the face of socially driven perceived threats. And I'm going to say perceived because it really is about our own personal experience and how we have come to our current situation and what we believe is expected of us. Okay, so when we think about immunity, and that's what this is, actually, the immune system should have been up there. All right, so we think about immunity, we can think about biological immunity on the left. There's innate biological immunity. If you get it, you have an infection, you get a cold, your body, if it's a new foreign bug, your innate immunity says, this is not self, this is not me, this does not belong here. And you will at least have an increase in temperature and inflammatory response. That's innate immunity from the biological perspective, built to protect you. The adaptive immune response comes up a couple of weeks later. Now they've been able to build a specific machine, antibodies, to target this specific bug. And next time you see it, you can take it out right away. And if we think about it socially from the behavioral perspective, the innate behavioral protection is basically that. A normal, healthy human child will talk between 1.5 to 2.5 years, a walk between 9 months and 14 months, because that's normal genetic programming. So a lot of our behaviors in the early days it is genetically pre-programmed, and it should happen if we're talking about a normal, average, healthy human being. But the adaptive social behavioral challenges are very dependent upon the context in which we are growing up. Because again, the brain is a social organ, and everything that develops inside there really depends on how you're perceiving the world around you through your nervous system, through your senses, right? Vision, hearing, smell, touch, temperature, and then your interactions with other people, and all of that is integrated. Okay, so let's say a strong immune system, it helps us, right? It helps us survive and it helps us thrive. How do we actually examine and understand our immunity? Okay, biological immunity is pretty simple. Take a blood sample, right? Challenge it with a foreign antigen and observe what happens. But with our behavioral immunity, it's incredibly difficult because, again, remember this scarf layers we have. Adaptive immunity and causal events are not easily accessible for examination. And I would like you to consider the statement that your strong immune system actually helps you survive and thrive. But in what situations does your immune system actually work against you? Any ideas? We can talk about biological immunity. When does your biological, say it again?
Allergies or other autoimmune diseases, MS or
allergies, autoimmune diseases. How about when you need an organ transplant, right? So there's lots of ways in which your immune system helped you to a certain point and then now stopped helping you. And the same is true of our behavioral immunity. All the behaviors that you have accumulated as scientifically trained professionals, they helped you get where you are. So we're not saying that they're bad. We're saying that they might no longer serve you as you're trying to actually acquire new capabilities. You're trying to go from that caterpillar to the butterfly, which means you can't do the same things. The butterfly is not going to do the same things the caterpillar was doing. And if you want to acquire these new capabilities, something has to change. Okay, so this is a method. I am a trained and certified facilitator of the immunity to change method, and I use this for developmental coaching. I primarily use this for the Association of Women in Science, but I'm going to walk you through this tool. And if you're interested in learning more, let me know. The diagnostic tool can be used for individual and team coaching, and it is a path to actionable information and sustainable change. All right, so when you see this is my map. It's a 4-column exercise, but don't be deceived. It's not something you do in 15 minutes. If I run this as a group, it's a 3 to 4 hour workshop. Okay. In the first column, people have to choose an improvement goal. And then they go through and say, okay, now what am I doing or not doing that's preventing me from getting to that goal? And then we reveal their behavioral immune system in column 3 and actually identify competing goals. The reason we can't get to this new goal is because we actually have competing goals that we are unaware of because they are actually unconscious drivers of our behavior. And in the last column, we actually articulate the big assumptions we are making about what's expected of us, about what we have to do. And if we don't do it, there's some dire consequence we really believe will happen. This is true for everybody. And this is basically a lot of the reasons why adaptive challenges are messy, because we have these unconscious competing goals, and they are based on these big assumptions that we have based on our lifelong experience. Okay, so I'm going to walk through quickly what I would do if we're in a group. I would actually have a group say, let's pick a goal that matters. All right, it has to be important for you personally, professionally. There has to be room for substantial improvement. You have to be the one on the hook for that improvement. And when I say that, I mean, I've had people say, well, I want my team to listen to me better. No. This is about you. So what are you doing and what can you do differently such that you are getting better feedback from your team? And it needs to feel true for you. And this might seem weird, but let's look at these mirrors and I will explain why I'm saying it needs to feel true for you. The mirror on the wall is a mirror that might be hanging in your hallway on your way out the door. When you look in this mirror, you only see sort of the front of you, okay? And look at this other mirror. This is the mirror that maybe if you go to the barbershop, the salon, they hand this to you so you can see the back of your head. Well, guess what? Everyone else always sees the back of your head, right? Another way to think about it is What did you think of this, of yourself, the first time you heard a recording of your voice or saw a video recording of you? How did it feel? Great, good, everyone loved it? Yeah, maybe not so much, right? But news flash, for everybody else, that's just who you are. That's how you sound. That's what you look like. That's how you act. That's how you move. That's, everybody already knows you, and the people who are closest to you and who you trust, they already know what this improvement goal should be. So if you're not sure, ask the people who know you best and who you trust want the best for you. Okay, so it still needs to feel true. If you get feedback from everybody and they say you really need to get better at listening to people, and you don't really feel that that's something you need to improve on, then it's not going to work as your column 1 goal. Column 2, all right? So you say you want to improve, but in column 2, what you're going to do is make a list of all the different things you're currently doing that actually prevent you from getting to your goal. Your current behaviors. And so the one rule about this column is they must be observable behaviors, and they cannot be in support of the goal. You actually have to talk about the things that you are currently doing that's working against your goal. Okay, so in my particular case, one of mine was make more time for, I've done this map for myself 5 times. One of my goals was to make more time for leisure. And I was doing everything but. I would invent new projects for myself to keep myself completely busy 24/7 because I liked feeling busy. But at the same time, I wanted to make more time for my kids and my family. So this is what happens. You walk through this column. You might need some guidance. Many of you are coaches. This is something that it helps having a coach to get through. Trust me. And in column 3, this one is the beast. So this was broken up into 2 sections. You can see the empty box under competing goals. So in that one is you don't actually even share during the process where we do this as a group workshop. There's no sharing of this. This is a pretty private and pretty hard thing to do. We call this the Yuck Box. This is where you turn off your prefrontal cortex. I don't want you thinking about rationalizing, giving any reasons for why you are doing or not doing things that work against your goal. I would just say what feels bad, right? So look at column 2 and all the things you're doing. If you stop doing that and go one at a time, what feels so bad about it? And essentially, you're making a list of things that are scary, that you're afraid of. And a lot of examples that come out of that are just, I'm afraid of looking stupid. I'm afraid that I'm useless. I'm afraid that I'll be replaced. Everyone has a different reason for feeling the way they feel, but a lot of people come to the same feelings of dread. And these are the things that are driving their current behaviors. All right. So the Yuck Box becomes a list of fears associated with changing current behaviors. And when we run this as a workshop with a group, Vegas rules apply, right? Nobody shares what happens in the ITC workshop stays in the ITC workshop. Okay. But then if you come to the second half of column 3, you actually take those fears and you don't just say, I don't want to feel yucky, afraid, weak, stupid, lazy, unnecessary, right? You actually make a statement that not only do you not want to feel that way, you're committed to never feeling that way. You're committed. I'm committed to not looking stupid. I'm committed to not being useless. I'm committed to people not thinking I'm lazy, right? And this is a big common problem with people who go from a technical role into a leadership or management role. They're so used to doing all the work. When they're not doing the work and they have to help other people get the work done, they feel like they're being lazy. They feel like they're not actually doing their job. And that's a huge trigger. And that's why it's a huge barrier for people to make that jump. Okay, so this is column 3 where we actually surface your behavioral immune system. And when you compare column 1 and column 3, you can actively see how you have your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. And I know we're at 8:28, and this is going to be my second to last slide, right? Column 4 is where you actually have to make your statements. So if these are my commitments, these are my competing commitments. I'm committed to not feeling useless. What assumptions am I making? One assumption is if I'm not the one doing the work, then I'm not needed. I will be fired, right? There's some big assumptions, but generally your first big assumptions you create will really be cliff jumping, like car going over the cliff feels like your life will end. So in my map where I said in the goal, I wanted to make more time for leisure, when I got to my big assumptions, and it's not going to make any sense because this is very nonlinear. Adaptive challenges are like a maze. It doesn't connect linearly. It won't be logical. But my big assumption was, if I am boring, I will die alone. That was one of my big assumptions in column 4 when my goal was just make more time for leisure. So clearly that's not a hypothesis I can test, right? So you have to back that up and say, okay, if I'm not constantly doing new things, will my friends not like me? Will they not want to hang out with me anymore? So these are things that you can do. Okay, in the end, when I said this method gives you actionable information and can accelerate the process of working through adaptive challenges for individuals and for teams, it only works if you do the work, right? So you have some big assumptions, treat those as hypotheses and go run some experiments. And this is the thing about adaptive challenges. You work through them by doing experimentation, testing, some sort of fundamental truths that you believe about yourself and about the world. Some of them will not. You will find out to be false, but you have to find that out for yourself. Adults learn by figuring it out for themselves and proving it to themselves. You can't tell somebody something. They have to do this for themselves. All right, I will send these along to you if you are interested in this work. Here's some additional books by Keegan Leahy. I highly recommend all 3 of these books. And I am done on time.
Dr. Vaughan, thank you very much. That was really, really good. Thank you for carving the time. Stick with us. And let's see, it's tight. Let's see if there are any sort of like lingering questions.
There's one in the chat right now, and I can scroll up, but David asked, how does one define done for an adaptive goal? And I think that one thing I can tell you is when you've done it. But one of the ways is when you look at your list of big assumptions, your truths about how you must behave and how the world works, and you go, oh my God, that's so dumb. Why did I ever think that? That's one very clear sign that you have overturned one of your big assumptions. Okay, so you won't overturn them all. Some of them you'll say, this is actually true, and I want to live according to this. That's a choice. And some of them you'll try to talk yourself out of some of your big assumptions. You'll rationalize, no, but I know it's not true. But I would say if you're behaving as if it's true, then it is true for you as driving your behavior. So you need to address it.
Incidentally, Sherry is re-asking you, Cheryl, when you get around it, what was the reason for not running the 5K?
So I think that I will tell you, okay, personal revelation. I grew up on a farm with 6 brothers, and I never was the fastest, never was the strongest. And I really felt like, what's the point? Like, I'm never going to be faster. And so my assumption was, if I'm going to run, I have to run as fast or faster than my brothers, because otherwise, what's the point? I'm a bit of a competitive person, right? So I think that was one of my drivers. And then when I started running last, I thought I had to be fast. And I've always thought of myself as slow. And last time I realized that's a big assumption that I overturned. You don't have to run fast. You can I walk really fast. So actually I jog barely faster than I walk, but that's okay.
Thank you for that.